Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to unbox another Elves box by Sophie and Toffee. Please ignore the glitter on my hands. I had a glitter explosion from a previous project and it's all over my table still, even though I cleaned it up twice. So I'm gonna have some glitter on my hands for quite a while. This theme is the classic books theme, and here we have the booklet with the social media information. Sadly, they left the little wax seal blank. They could have put some fun icon there, like a book or something like that. But the cover looks pretty nice and indeed classic bookish. Now, the first item in this box is this sleeve with like 3 things inside. So first up we have a paper which is just a printout, and it looks like it shows the setup of the books, and it shows how the measurements for the book mold are actually sized. And then we also get this foil embed film which has these beautiful butterflies, and we get a huge list of classical books. I'm not gonna name all of them, I'm just gonna mention some of my favorites. But I'm gonna show you very slowly which of the titles they are. They are pretty small, so it's kind of hard to see some of the titles, but the first one I really love is Murder at the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I really love all of Hercule Poirot titles. Agatha Christie in general is one of my favorite authors. She wrote her crime series so well and had some really unexpected plot twists. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and of course Lord of the Rings I also really love, although I have to say the Chronicles of Narnia I only ever had as audiobooks. And then of course cannot forget about the Three Musketeers and Sherlock Holmes. And cannot forget about Edgar Allan Poe. His short stories and his classic stories are just so good and so mysterious. We also have Grimm's Fairy Tales, which of course there's a wide variety of stories, but I grew up with them and I love a lot of them quite a bit because they're just really good stories. Next up we have 2 red tassels. I'm sure you can make bookmarks or decorations out of them. And then we have this stuff which is all stuck together by the magnets. So we have 4 magnets, we have some book edge covers, and we have some hooks and ear hoops and so on to make some jewelry. I'm sure that's for the small books. Now, one thing I noticed quite recently is that their more like liquid resins are always having a yellower part. I know they have some resin clear, but it just has been like happening very often that you don't really get a clear one. Next up we get some odorless LED UV resin and some candy pigment and some mica powders in blue, white, turquoise and brown. And the brown has like a golden hue to it. And then we have this giant mold. So I already know what's in this box because I was pretty excited for this, and this is a book box mold. So we have the lid on the bottom and the book box mold on top, and then we have these 2 smaller book molds. We have one with an open book and like 2 variety sizes of books, and then we have a double book mold for 2 of the same, which I think may be for the earrings. And let's actually have a look into the book. Here it shows all of the items and what they're supposed to be. They left the book box on the front pretty plain in the image, which I think is quite sad because it could have given others some inspiration to, like, I don't know, add some coloring. Also, one thing I noticed is that there's only 4 magnets if you really want to make the book box lid. I think you need like 8 to have all of the corners and not just 2 of them on both sides magnetic, but that's fine. And then of course we have their instructions and their tips and all that stuff. And here they say we are supposed to put the magnets in all 4 corners, but there is no actual thing you can put in the lid to actually make it magnetic without other magnets, sadly. And here we have on the last page the winner for the last box, and this looks so cool. The butterfly with the flowers, it looks so pretty. And then we of course have the community showcase, which I always love. There's so many inspirational things in there, and I love the Halloween candy shelf thing. But let's actually get into making something. So I don't quite know what I used the books for yet, but I really wanted to make the small books. I just decided against resin. I thought that actually making them out of clay would be much nicer because you can color it, it will pick up the texture nicely, and I don't have to worry about waiting times or air bubbles. So what I did, I just conditioned some white Fimo in this case, and I'm just gonna press it inside the mold very thoroughly to make sure it's around all the edges and gets all the imprints of the pages that I made. And then I'm gonna cut up the excess carefully with my sharp cutting tool. Now with these molds you always need to make sure that they're square and all that, because these are very, very soft silicone, but in pressing in the sides it will actually make sure that I have the pages imprinted on the sides of the clay, so that the books really look like books, which is nice. And please always be careful when you use sharp blades like this. This is a really, really sharp clay blade, and it's usually for cutting straight lines. It's always good to have a certain bit of caution with these kinds of blades, because I cut myself pretty badly with this before, so I'm always a bit careful while using this. And to bake this off, I'm just gonna put it onto my tray, and it will actually stick on there just from the mold. I noticed one of the books has a little bit of an imperfection on the side. I missed another one that has, but that's totally fine because you can hardly see. And then all I'm gonna do is trim off a little bit of clay that's gotten on there that made like a weird bump. And then it's time to put on the covers. This was fairly straightforward. You just have to line this and then glue them on. I found it easiest to align the spines and then glue them on, because some of the tape will overlap on the sides and make it look like it's a real cover. And I again chose some of my favorite books, in this case Edgar Allan Poe, Murder at the Orient Express. For the large open book I actually chose Sherlock Holmes, and I made sure to actually press it in there really well so that the sticker would actually hold up well onto the books. Now, lining the open one was actually a little bit tricky, and it took me quite a while, but after I got it I think it looks pretty cool. Now remember that for the open book, if you just have it laying around you cannot really see the title, but I thought, you know, having it laying upside down or something, or just wearing it as a necklace would be really nice. And then I also searched for a title that would fit the larger book, because there is some excess, so I thought, why not try it? Now for the smaller book it gets a bit harder because you need to trim off some of the title and it will not fit with the way the backing is made. But for this larger book I chose to put on the Lord of the Rings cover, because it just makes sense, because that's a pretty large book, at least the version we have. And all I did was I put on the main sticker, and then I cut around the edges a little bit and made sure to trim those to size, and then I just went around, carefully placed the ring that I cut out, or the square that I cut out around the outsides. Now there's a little bit of a gap between the actual meant to be sticker and the excess that you can use. But I don't think it's that noticeable, and it's very nice to have the option to actually put stickers on the larger book. I'm sure if you work a bit cleaner than I did, you will not have as many troubles with aligning the edges, but I had to reposition it multiple times, so I had to actually cut off some of the excess a little bit. But in the end it worked out really well. And for the tiny book I actually picked up a very, very old cleaning cloth that we had. We always wanted to throw this away, but I saw this as an opportunity to use this for crafting, because it actually looks like leather by now. It has frayed so much that it looks like it's actually made out of leather, and although it is a bit thick for this book, I still think it would make a nice cover for this. And indeed, it worked really well. I misglued on my first try though, so it got a bit wonky, but in the end it wasn't really noticeable. Now another advantage of clay instead of just using plain resin is that you can actually like put shading on it and do a wash. I wanted the cloth to actually be a dark shade, so I colored that completely, and for the other books I just colored the edges, and for the open one I like put a little bit of the like brown blackish wash on the pages and just wiped it off. I didn't want to go with the typical like sepia or yellowish color that books get, but instead like make them look like a tiny bit more used but not like too old. Next up, of course, I wanted to make the book box because that really made me curious. So I picked up some magnets from my own stash. They're neodymium, so they should definitely get through the resin and hold pretty well. Those I put in the book side, and then I put the flat ones that we got in the box on the lid. And they also have these like stickable small flat like magnet strips, and those I'm using underneath both of the molds just to make sure that the magnets while I'm pouring the resin actually don't slip, which in case of the lid didn't really work because I had to move the magnets around anyways to make sure that they're covered in resin. And then I'm just mixing up some 1:1 resin. I'm actually not using the one in the box because I want to have it set a bit quicker. And I'm just using some of my matte white pigment. Now for the book mold, as you can see, it's like bent outwards a little bit, which at the time I'm pouring this I totally was not paying attention to. It just from transport, the mold got a little squished in the box. If you have that, you can make like a little cardboard like rectangle and put the mold inside, and that will stabilize it. It wasn't too bad luckily, but it definitely was very noticeable, so I'm really sad that I didn't notice earlier. And of course the weight of the resin makes it move outwards a little bit more anyways. As for the cover, I just put in a little bit of the resin, made sure it got underneath all the edges so that the air bubbles could escape, and then I put it around the magnets, make sure those are covered, that none of the edges actually are missing resin. Then I just put the rest in. And basically all I did after was put on some like stronger magnets on the edges just to make sure, because I had the feeling that the cover mold had a little bit of a thicker silicone, and the like thin strips that I used underneath weren't really holding. And then I had to kind of fish for the magnets again, because as I said, I moved them around, and while I poured the last layer of resin, it actually like moved the magnets out of the corners a little. But I found all of them, managed to move them back. I'm just not quite sure if the orientation is still right, but that should be okay. And after a day, it was actually mostly cured. Now the magnets, as one can see, luckily stayed in place. And another thing one may notice is the colorful like middle part of the lid, and that is because I noticed that the resin is a bit too little to actually make the lip properly that would like fit on the box. So I put a like leftover cast bit that just was from a random pour in there just to fill it up a little. It's very handy to keep some of the like more beautiful like leftover random bits that you have lying around, because they're quite useful for things like this. Now obviously in this case you can see it a bit more, but it will be covered up once I finish the box. And as soon as I tried to put it together, I noticed that the inside like raised part is way too small to actually fit the cutout of the box properly. It's moving around way too much. And since I'm using a bit of a different shape of magnets, those magnets need to align better. So all I did was I used some craft foam, just the thin like 2mm type, glued it around with some super glue and then trimmed it up. And that actually worked perfectly. Now it doesn't have the same color, and I'm sure you can actually color it, but it fits super well. And it was really easy to trim off the excess of this one and make it fit. So if you have a lid that doesn't really align and you want to make it fit better, then do that. Another thing I noticed is that two of the magnets actually they must have like turned around while I was pouring the resin, because they were actually going against each other. So luckily, as I always do, I molded this while the resin was still a little bit soft, so that I can like bend it to make adjustments and all that stuff. And that's exactly what I did with these magnets. I actually used my knife and a like pointy tool to carefully peel them out of the resin, and since they're basically like on the surface of the resin, I didn't really have to put any force or cut them out. And then I just used more super glue to glue them in, and it worked really, really well. Now I found the cover was a bit like boring looking, so I used this artificial leather that I bought some strips of. This is really nice because it has like a fabric texture that will use and suck up some super glue really nicely, so it will actually stick with that really well. And you can also use it for sewing and all that stuff, so it's very versatile, although it's a bit pricey in comparison. But I really like this material, and since you can make so many things with this and it looks really good, and it actually comes in different colors, I just chose this dark leather brown. It comes also in like lighter colors and like reds and all that stuff. I thought this would be really well fitting for this book. Now I had some trouble, as you can see, to get the edges to stick and stay down. The like fabric backing of this sucked up the glue a bit too much and it became stiff, so I couldn't really bend it around anymore. But in the end I managed to fix it, and it was actually quite fine. So all I'm doing is liberally applying super glue on all the sides, making sure I can still open it, and this faux leather will be basically the hinge for the box lid. Now you can of course just color in the lid or something like that and the back and make it look like a book without having this, but I thought this leather would look really, really nice. And then to decorate the inside and hide the edges a little bit, I'm using just some really, really thin fabric kind of string, and I think it turned out really nicely. And then lastly, I also wanted to get some shading on the pages, because this is resin and it will not take color. I decided to actually sand along the grooves, so I'm using my pointy sanding tool, and I'm just going along all of the grooves that are there to like visualize the pages, just making sure that they're a bit roughed up so that they will actually keep the acrylic paints in. This actually took a while, but in the end it worked out really well, because when you have rough resin it takes color really well. It's a technique I used before on the Halloween pumpkin house, and I decided to use again here. And then I'm just using some pure black acrylic paint, and I'm just making sure to hit all of the edges, and I'm also going a little bit over the thread that I added, because some of the super glue made it a little bit white. But you cannot really notice the difference between the paint and the thread color in the end, which I'm really happy. And then all I do is, after I let it dry a little bit, going over with a kitchen towel and rubbing it off. I noticed that some of the grooves actually rubbed off a bit too much. I guess when it dried, it, like while I was wiping it, it like pulled off a little bit out of the grooves. So I just made the mixture a little bit more watery and then rubbed it all over again. And that actually helped. And then lastly, I just used my hands and covered the book a little bit in that black wash to give it some more aging. And I think it turned out really, really nicely. Overall, I have to say I'm pretty happy with this box. Of course, making a bookmark mold or something like that, you know, in there. But to be fair, there was still a lot of like molds and all that stuff in there to make a project. And the tiny books you can absolutely make and use for miniatures, which I really love too. You don't have to make jewelry out of them. As I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do with them yet. I actually might put them in dioramas or something like that. But for now, I'm just gonna have them like in my miniature box for future projects. And the book box is actually really lovely. The mold has some nice detail on the back of the book. And in total, the box actually is really well shaped. It has a nice size of compartment inside that you can use for many things. You can store jewelry or just hide it in between your books if you decorate it, maybe like I did. And I also really loved the variety of book titles they gave us. I'm sure most people will find at least 1 or 2 book titles they like. And even if the covers look so pretty that if you want to put it in a diorama, make jewelry or something like that, just the optics of the cover might suit a person's fancy. So overall, it was a pretty well put together box. We had some projects for making miniature books, either make them into jewelry or, as I said, put them into dioramas, or something entirely different. Maybe you were gonna make books and cast them into a different project or something. I think that would actually be a really interesting idea to cast random floating books into some project, or you just maybe make the book box, because I think that's a really neat thing too. You can hide your things in there, put your jewelry in there and all that, and it's a really pretty design. And you can make some bookmarks with the tassels and all that, and of course the colorants are also always really nice to have. And as I already mentioned in my videos before, the candy pigment is basically the Morandi pigment. It's just that the brown looks a bit more like chocolate or something. And I'm always really happy to receive those kinds of pigments, because the colors are super nice and they're super opaque, so they're really nice for resin. But of course I'm always using them up very quickly, so anything that comes in any box I'm super appreciative. Anyways, let me know in the comments down below, what were your thoughts about this box? Did you actually get it? And which book titles did you like? Did you find something in the stickers that you actually want to use, and any book titles you really like there, or are you making your own covers? As always, I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!